As we wind down winter, maybe, and look to spring, the steady stream of gaming news continues onward. Not yet to the level of E3, but still plenty to go on. Today we give you the first free play episode of 2018, a little earlier than when we typically do one, but I thought I'd shake things up a little. It's an open discussion, so we'll talk about anything related to the world of video games, and with no set topic, I have genuinely no idea what the panel is going to bring up, so you might be surprised. Listen in to free play number 1 of Season 8, next on Downloadable Content. Hello everyone, welcome to Downloadable Content. I'm Brian, and with me we have Ron.
Hey everyone.
We have Ronnie.
Hey.
We have Nick.
With extra snark today.
Oh, goody! And for the first time in over a year, welcome back, Tanya.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Good to have you back.
Thank you.
You live.
I live.
That's how some people feel like after so long. It's like, you're alive!
I'm kind of convinced that Brian brought you on specifically because I'm going to talk about RPGs.
Oh, no.
Well, a funny story. Tanya messaged me like 10 minutes before 2 saying, I'm in, I'm available. So no, this was not on. As much as I would like to take the credit, Ronnie, for bringing Tanya on as a foil to you, no such luck. This was a complete spontaneous thing. So,
okay.
Thank you, though.
Have decreed it.
Thank you, though. I mean, I appreciate the effort, but you know, I'm not quite the puppet master sometimes that you think I am. So
dance, my puppets, dance.
Basically. But yes, it is a free play episode, our first one of Season 8, so I have no idea what anyone's going to talk about. I love doing these episodes because the range of stuff is all over the place because it's such a broad episode. But before we dive in, just want to remind everyone out there on the wide world of the internet that every single episode of Downloadable Content can be found on our website, dlcpodcast.com, as well as iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play Music. You can also check out the website for upcoming recordings, give us feedback, let us know if you want to be in on an episode, give us ideas for future episodes, or just sing our praises. I mean, we like that too. I mean, hungry for fame and all that. So I need to keep Ron fed. It's just...
Well, I could use a fresh new coat of paint in the closet, so...
Yeah.
I thought it was the basement. I thought he kept you in the basement.
No, he's over 100 episodes now. His living situation's improved.
Yes, I've gone from basement shackle to a radiator to a 2x2 closet.
With a space heater. He does live in Chicago, after all. So, that's, yes, dlcpodcast.com. So, we've got a full boat here. So, Tanya, as the one who has not been on in the longest amount of time, I'm going to start with you.
Well, thank you, Brian, for having me on today. Yeah, it's really nice to be here after so long. I've been working a lot, so, you know, it's been kind of hard to do things, but I'm glad I'm here. I do want to get right into it, so I'm just going to say 2 words. Chrono Trigger.
The game in general, or the new release?
The new release on Steam. So I just checked it on Steam, and it's got something like 314, and most of those reviews are negative. It's got a mostly negative rating on Steam. And of course, I think everybody, and if you don't know, everybody knows what Chrono Trigger is, and if you don't, well, you should, because it's probably the greatest RPG that's ever been made.
Go back to our episode on Chrono Trigger.
Yes.
Yeah, all 3.5 hours of it.
Yeah, one of the best games ever made.
It really is too, and that's one of my personal favorites. It's a masterpiece. Now,
Yeah. One of my top 3.
I was an early adopter, so I got the game, and I didn't pay $14. I went through Green Man Gaming and got it for like $12 or something like that. But so I got it, and it's still Chrono Trigger, but I know where all the controversy is coming from, and I know why people are basically just crapping all over it, and it's because Square Enix really did do a piss poor job of porting it. They basically just took the mobile version, didn't do anything with it, didn't optimize it for PC, and just put some resolution options on it, put a filter on it, this bilinear filter that looks absolutely horrific, and just slapped it onto Steam, and there you go. That's all they did.
So, like what they did with Final Fantasy 5 and 6.
Except with Final Fantasy 5 and 6, the backgrounds and even the sprites, whether you like the sprites or not, they were remade. But
5 and 6, the one they put on Steam, was just the mobile port too. I think that's actually pretty much what they did with Chrono Trigger, from what I understand.
They are the mobile ports. That is true. Actually, they are pretty much the straight mobile ports, which I'm not very fond of them either. But that's a whole different story. But
they've been butchering their games, their mobile ports. Like, they're still the same games, like gameplay wise and story wise, but like, I do not like the direction they went with the style, and it seems like they've decided that the mobile versions of the graphics are now the definitive version that they're going to use and everything from now on, and that's concerning.
It's very concerning, and I agree with you, because I mean, it's like, I'm sure pretty much everybody here, we remember Squaresoft, we remember Enix, we remember these companies before they were Square Enix, and how, I mean, hell, when, PS1, Squaresoft, do I need to say any more than that? I mean, come on, it was hit after hit after hit, amazingness after amazingness. And it's just, I mean, the fall of Square, I guess we'll say, is a whole different story. But what I'm concerned about here, in terms of Chrono Trigger, is that there wasn't going to get anything done. I thought, because just like with Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6, on Steam, where nothing was done for them in terms of updating them or just making them more optimized for PC at the very least. Chrono Trigger, it's so beloved by our community that and I mean ours and gaming community in general, it's so beloved that it finally got to the point where I think gamers like the world over basically said enough's enough. And Square Enix, actually, no, I should say the team behind the port of Chrono Trigger finally actually put out something today. I couldn't believe it. They actually put out that they are reading everybody's reviews, and they are looking at all the discussions, and that they're actually taking things into account. Holy hell!
Zong!
Yeah, feel free.
So I got two quick things. One, I feel like they did the mobile port more so because it was easier, and by easier I mean cheaper, for them to use the mobile port like coding than it was for them to actually go back to the Super Nintendo and try and convert that to Steam. Because I mean, compared to Chrono Trigger back then to now, pretty much any computer can run it. The issue is more so having it encoded properly, because coding for analog, which is maybe 360 1080p is not going to work on today's very random size resolutions. It won't scale properly, so which leads to distortions. Whereas with the mobile ports, they would have scaled properly for it. Also, the mobile port, I think, had some dialogue and texture updates, which is probably why they wanted to use it for translation purposes instead of getting the Super Nintendo translation, which was still pretty good, but I think got improved slightly when the mobile port came out. But to the point of them saying that they're listening to the reviewers, okay, you're listening to them. Are you actually going to fix any of the problems with your games? I mean, Chrono Trigger came out with literally no pomp or circumstance. It's just like, oh look, Chrono Trigger's on Steam. Wait, what do you mean Chrono Trigger's on Steam? Yeah, it just randomly showed up on Steam like 3 days ago. And another thing that got added to Steam a little while ago was Secret of Mana remake. And that's pretty buggy too.
Yeah, the one thing I'll bring up that you were just mentioning was they actually had a pretty definitive edition. They didn't have to go to the Super Nintendo. The mobile port was based off of the DS one, which is pretty much the definitive version of it, where the graphics were up-res, they had new quests, they had new stuff, and the mobile port was taking that and then just layering on top really, really unpopular, I'll say, graphics. I would say crappy graphics, but that's a judgment call, but I'll say very unpopular graphics like they have been with all of their mobile ports, where
divisive graphics.
Yeah, they look very Vaseline-y. They are too bright for the rest of the one. They seem to lack detail compared to the original sprites. Like they don't look good. But yeah, that I don't understand why they didn't take that and bring that DS one to Steam, because that should be able to run on the bigger things.
You know, you'd think that, and you know, like I was yesterday just browsing through Steam, like going through one of those discovery queues, and I saw that Chrono Trigger had come out, and I was just like, wait, what? And you know, I'm just taking a look at the graphics, and you know, it just seems like an easy fix. I mean, it looks like something that like Tanya could do in her sleep. And you know, just like I get the profound sense that initially Square was just looking for some easy cash, and they would have got it. They would have got it in spades because of just on the name alone and the legacy of this game. But it was just this looking at the version on Steam currently, it feels even less than half-assed. And it's
I kind of get a feeling
quarter-assed.
I don't even think that. I think it's like a raw egg and just stapled the plastic, like painted like a clock on its face and just stuck that on Steam and called it the Chrono Trigger.
1/8 fast? Is that how much we're talking about here?
I mean, if you want to do it, and you know, fractionally, I mean, sure, it's
Chrono Trigger. Like they did this for several games at this point. Like between Final Fantasy V, Final Fantasy VI, even Final Fantasy IV, like they've done this for a lot of beloved games, and I'm interested in why. Not that there wasn't complaining before. There's been complaining forever, but why Chrono Trigger out of Final Fantasy IV and VI was the one that got this much kickback, that it actually got a response from Square Enix, which we've never gotten before for any of these remakes.
No,
like they've never recognized it. Sorry, Brian, you can go.
No, Tanya's
cool.
up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I was actually you just touched on what I was going to talk about. Yeah, you know that this is really, when you think about it, this is actually the first game that they put onto Steam that is I'll say a port, of a classic port, that we've actually gotten a response from them. And I think it's because people, for the first time in terms of Square Enix's ports, they're voting with their wallet. If you look at the number of reviews on there and how many negative there are, they also say the keyword refund. Mm-hmm. There's apparently really what they're doing is that they're playing like 5 minutes or they're playing an hour's worth or whatever, and then they leave their review and then they refund it. And actually I looked on Steam Spy, and lo and behold, it's very true. And you could actually see the fall of Chrono Trigger even if you looked at it day by day. It was on new and trending under Steam, and then it went from new and trending to nothing. It was gone.
What specifically has Square Enix said? Because I have not seen their response.
It's on the front page. Give me 1 second. I'm actually on it right now.
Well, while you look, Ronnie.
Yeah, I was just going to say off of what Tanya said. I mean, between people spending with their money, I'm like I think most of us here probably are, but I very much the target demographic. Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite games of all time. I own every version of it that they've ever released. I would have bought this day one, and I was about to until I saw it was the mobile release. And I went, nope, I'm never going to be playing that. It looks like I'm just going to be playing it on Steam again, on a DS again. Like, the Steam version is never going to get my money while it's the way it is right now.
Is this... Are all of these negative reviews based solely on the graphics, or are there gameplay issues?
Graphics.
If you don't mind, I'll just take that real quick. It's graphic issues, but there is also some. But the main issues are both graphic and UI. The UI honestly is atrocious.
Isn't that still graphical though? Like the UI still works exactly the same as in the old game. It's just uglier and less functional because it's uglier.
Well, I mean, it's more like it. Well, see, I would say that, but the thing is that the UI is so completely different than any other version. I mean, it was even different than the mobile version. At one point before, because what they did was, see, Square Enix, they're sly about it. They updated when they put Chrono Trigger out on Steam. They also updated the mobile version at the same time, so there was basically one version for all platforms. That's what they did. But before this, the mobile version actually looked a little bit different.
I'm glad we don't have updates for old SNES cartridges, or they would have pushed an update down to make them all look like this.
That's a fair point. But while we're talking about that, a lot of these complaints are in regard to the graphics. I am not going to retread my constant gripe about the super importance that American gamers place on graphics, but how much polish can you give a 28-year-old game or a 23-year-old game?
They didn't polish it. They threw the old graphics out and just completely redid them.
Well, in this case, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead, Tanya. Go ahead.
But no, in this case, what they do is that they that's exactly pretty much what they do is they took basically what it is. It's a port of a port of a port. It's the port of the mobile version. That's the port of the DS version. So it's like they did take the existing. I can't even. Well, I guess you can call it the ROM, but not really anymore. But they took the existing ROM. They apply, and this is what they did. And one of the modders, it's on the discussion forum I was following, actually noted this, and I went, oh shoot, is that the filter that they use, this bilinear filter that's in everything. If you remove it, it only gets rid of only certain things in the landscape and whatnot. It doesn't get rid of it on the sprites. It's actually baked into the sprites itself.
Tanya, I forgot about the font. They changed the font to fucking Arial.
Oh, the font.
I forgot. I was looking up to find a good picture of the one so I could share it for anybody in the group who hasn't seen it yet.
Oh god.
And then the first thing I see is the font, and I go, "Oh, fucking Lord!"
It's like Comic Sans. It really is. It's so bad.
So what you're saying is that Square Enix basically made a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox, but with Chrono Trigger.
With the worst Steam is the worst version of Chrono Trigger to date. I mean, like, the best version, I think we all can agree on, is the DS version. That's the best version of Chrono Trigger. And the second best version, I think, would be the SNES version, and then you go down to the PS1 version, and then you'd have Steam. Steam is the absolute worst. Still Chrono Trigger, but it's the worst version of it.
I would probably put the Super Nintendo and PlayStation 1 together, because the PlayStation 1, I mean, the cutscenes were nice. Yes, there were loading times. You also had the extra ending. So I don't know. I appreciate the extra content because I'm obsessive about all that stuff. So I made a nice spreadsheet about how Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger intersect when I was younger.
Oh, I love those.
You would.
Yeah, yes, I would. I also
Yes, you would.
When I was younger, this is a true story. I'm sorry for tangenting a little bit, but at the time, I didn't have the money to buy Chrono Cross, so I downloaded the script off of the internet back when the internet was still a baby, and printed the entire script of Chrono Cross out. Everything, NPC dialogue. It was like 400 or 500 pages.
I was gonna say that's about 400, 500 pages.
Yep. And I combed through that and tried to cross-reference it against Chrono Trigger. Eventually, I did get to play Chrono Cross, but that was my first experience with Chrono Cross.
Nerd!
Yeah.
I was gonna say, mind you too, this is still probably in the area of 56.6K modem, so it's like today it'd be a 3 megabyte text file.
This was a 56K modem off of AOL.
Yeah, so that, nowadays that'd be like a 3 megabyte text file, which would show up instantaneously. Back then, that was probably a 5-minute download.
Yeah, and actually, honestly, with the time period, I actually might have had slower than a 56K modem at that point.
Oh dear. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Ronnie, you're nothing if not dedicated. That's for damn sure.
I was an obsessive fan. I tried to make a timeline of all the Final Fantasies that actually made logical sense. That was a project for a while.
Oh, and one that probably ended in total failure.
That would drive a man to drink.
I think I was fine up until 10 came out. I think I was able to make it all work up until 10. And I think 10 is where... Yeah.
Which is funny because that's probably the only Final Fantasy world that's actually linked to a prior Final Fantasy.
12. 12 is...
Okay, 12 links to 12 links to Tactics, true, yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah. Alrighty, so there we go. We have Chrono Trigger on Steam, and it's a big fat turd so far. So nice. Nick, let's go to you.
Oh boy, I have an axe to grind.
All right, so we had Tanya had an axe to grind. Now we'll go. Now we're gonna go. Now we go to what really grinds my gears, part 2. All right, Nick.
Oh yeah,
positivity everywhere today.
Well, then this is why I say I have extra snark, because Brian would know this, and when in the early days of the internet, in our early days of college, my specialty when it came to the video gaming industry was video games and politics. And if anyone's been keeping an eye and an ear to the news, we obviously know about the terrible tragedy of the Parkland shooting. Terrible thing that happened. But our wonderful president, and you may take that with or without sarcasm, depending your affiliations, has decided to invite the video game industry over to discuss issues about how to go about reacting to the Parkland shooting, essentially pinning the blame once again on video games. And I feel like slamming my head against the desk over and over and over again.
You'd break the desk at this point in time.
This is over. Like, this was a dead topic. The Supreme Court made a decision on this, and there was absolutely nothing to do about it. Everything is perfectly fine. Everything is perfectly legal. I thought this was dead.
It will never die.
No.
I saw
the
this.
Supreme Court voted on this. Once the Supreme Court votes, that's it. It's over. Issue dead.
You'd think that, but yeah, I saw that too, and I think I said something to the effect of, "Oh, how 1997 of you."
And Trump calls this meeting. The ESA says, "We were not told of this." So that asks the question, who exactly is Trump inviting? Number one. Number two, it is now the guy who wrote the article has just been informed that he received an email from Jack Thompson saying that he would like to get involved in all this. I'm like, oh, goody. So now we got to deal with Mr. Asshole again.
Can we not? Can we just not?
I second that.
Oh, good. Invite a very, very disbarred lawyer to weigh in on a topic that
Florida says get the fuck out.
Oh, goody.
So, just my opinion here, so again, my opinion. Take this with whatever grain of salt or belief you have or withhold or care about. So, just prefacing that right there. I feel like this is just another way to try and spin and deflect from the core issue at hand of why that incident occurred and what should be done or could be done to fix it. And then and my opinion is, I think he's going to try and pin some of this blame on video games and not on the core underlying issues that are actually plaguing the American society.
It is a multifaceted issue. And what the Washington Post kind of broke down is this doesn't happen in any other country, only us. There is a country that spends more money on video games than the U.S. does. That country is China, and they are among the lowest in terms of firearm violence.
Mm-hmm.
That's also because they have probably some of the strictest gun control laws in the entire world.
More than likely, but you could say the same thing about Japan, Australia, England. My point here is this: is exactly what you said, Ron. It's deflecting the issue at hand by being able to make something, to pin it on something tangible, is basically the easy way out. And it doesn't have to involve with just video games. It can involve anything. It can involve with mental illness. It can involve with the issue of guns. It really you can pin it on anything.
They're trying to pin the issue on culture, because they'll go, well, we didn't have these issues before a certain point in time, so what's happened is the culture's changed. And they go, well, what happened in that time period? Video games happened. That's part of why they deflect there. It's not the only place they deflect to, but they're all deflecting to cultural issues away from what is probably the core issues.
What is the core issue? And I think, again, the core issue, I think, is far more than any one single aspect. I think it's going to be years and years and years before you can really break everything down to such a level.
It is, in my opinion, I think it is a society issue, an American society issue specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because again, we seem to be the only country that has this problem.
So maybe
okay, sure. Maybe go into this chart here. Brazil also has an extremely high rate. But have you seen how disappropriated Brazil is? Like, a lot of that is dealt with financial issues, rather more than anything else. The financial disparity. That's the word.
I think the easiest way to debunk this is going, okay, which countries have high amounts of shootings in general? Us, Brazil, there's one or two others, even though we're the highest. And go, okay, what do those countries have in common, and what do they not have in common with other countries? And you want to know what? Violent video games isn't one of them, because they're sold everywhere.
But going back to the whole purpose of the articles is, what is inviting some of the most, inviting prominent heads of the ESA and the ESRB? What is that going to accomplish? I fail to see the purpose of actually calling the freaking meeting in the first place. You want to blindly pin something on the video game industry, that's one thing. We'll just call you a moron and move on. But to call individuals in to have conversations about it, I don't understand the reasoning behind that. Anyone care to help me on that? Because I'm totally lost here.
I would say something, but I tuned out for like 15 seconds, and now I don't know where the conversation went.
At least you're honest. Thanks.
I feel that it is a deflecting issue. And that's what's my opinion again.
I think most of us have that opinion, actually.
Yeah. My opinion is that this is what most of this administration is. His administration is boiling down to, is just deflecting and evading and not actually answering any actual problems that are facing Americans today. Again, my opinion. So
mote it be.
Yeah, there. The motion is passed and carried. So, Nick, there really is no point. It's just one, another in the dog and pony show that is the administration of President Vomit Shits. So, I can't wait for 20 years from now, because I think it's going to take that long before we start to get legislators legislating video games in any way that are people who grew up intimately with them. So I got distracted by the message. I lost my train of thought, guys. Anybody want to pick up what I was saying?
Quick, let's get the first show. The sands of time. We'll rerun this. What
was I just saying?
You were okay. You're talking about 20 years from now when we have legislators who actually grew up.
In 20 years, we'll finally have legislators who grew up with video games, who can make common sense laws regarding video games that actually aid the public. At this point, people are legislating from a point of ignorance. The couple legislators that do know what video games are and grew up playing them, because there are one or two right now, but that's not enough to get anything passed, and it's not enough to get a consensus, because at that point, everybody has their own opinion on them. Everybody grew up differently with video games, but if you get enough game players in the same room, you can get a pretty good consensus on where the problems are, what could be improved, and what needs to happen. Another issue where we're talking about this right now is the issue with loot boxes and the pay-to-win stuff, which don't need to go into this, but that ties right into this, where they're trying to legislate stuff they don't understand based off of buzzwords, and you can't do that and make anything effective happen. You're going to pummel it into the ground with a sledgehammer when you're trying to hit a nail. And that's not a really good way to build a table. You might knock that nail in, but your table is going to be in pieces on the floor. I've
you'll
talked
have
a
a
lot.
table. No, no. I mean, I perfectly, I totally get that. Any of us here 35 years old? No. Okay. I was gonna say, and any one of us 35 and can actually run for president?
I'm 36.
Well, I'll be 35 in 2020.
I will.
I can run in 2024. And that'd be the earliest I could run.
I'll run against Trump. I'm 36. Oh hell, I'll be 30. What? 38, 39.
Here. You have my vote. There, one. There. It's one
You
more
only
than
need
you
like what? 10,000. You only need 10,000 signatures to get in the ballot, right?
10,000 signatures. Yep.
Yeah, you can get
So-
10,000 signatures.
Oh yeah, that's not a problem. All right, Ron, you wanted to branch off of that, so just
Yeah.
and keeping in mind that knowing what you're about to talk about, I'm curious because we spent a lot of discussion on the previous episode.
Yes. So this is just a slight more so continuation of a topic that was brought up earlier. Was it like season 1? Or episode 1 of this season?
Episode 3. It was just a few weeks ago.
Okay, yeah, again, time flies. But so slight update. Here's your like breaking news, like DLC breaking news, government bullshit. Yeah. Yeah. So this is I'm gonna link the article so you guys can see what I'm reading and referring from. This is talking about how as of early mid February, Hawaii is introducing 4 bills that would regulate the sale of video games that feature quote unquote so-called loot boxes or loot crates as part of their gameplay, unquote. And it's going into detail and breaking it down, and now there are other states I remember seeing, I can't find the articles of, but other states are starting to also mention or deal with loot boxing stuff, and how other countries have also started to talk about loot boxing to the point where the ESRB is now having to adjust their rating system to also mention what games do have loot boxes and how that changes the rating system. You go ahead and jump in. That's my point.
Okay, yeah. When we continued on the pay to play 2.0 a few weeks ago, we had mentioned Washington State was another state that was considering legislation, and at the time that we did that episode, Hawaii was considering it. So now they've actually gone ahead and done it with putting in legislation regarding games with loot boxes, because the whole idea of is it gambling, is it not gambling, and whatever your opinion of that question is, are the notion of loot boxes gambling, a form of gambling. I'm just interested to see where this could go, because legislation like this has the potential to fundamentally change the way games could be made or sold. Because we all remember the idea that got shot down by the Supreme Court. California wanted to restrict the sales of M-rated games, which ultimately got shot down. So I'm curious to see if this actually gets approved. I see that the legislation has just been introduced. I'm curious to see if that does make it all the way through. Does that get challenged and go through the court system on the grounds of similar footing that the restriction of violent video games to minors goes through? So I'm just curious to see where this goes. Ronnie, you chimed in, and then Nick.
Yep. Well, first of all, I was going to say, when we did that last podcast, the Hawaii stuff was just starting, but the ESRB stuff hadn't even been brought up, hadn't started at all. And I think that I'm going to go two ways on the Hawaii stuff, but the ESRB stuff, that I think is what I mean by common sense rulings and legislation, because putting in your thing, informing the public that this game will require will or can require extra money and in what way, I think that is nothing but positive for the public.
I agree.
Like, also for common sense legislation, you have 4 bills in Hawaii, I believe, right now, dealing with loot boxes. 2 of them dealing with the age of loot boxes, and apparently I just found a secret. That was my phone. And the other 2 are requiring them to label and disclose what the rates are in their loot boxes. And that is the most important one. Forcing the companies to disclose what the rates are on any of their randomized loot, I think is the most important thing, and the one reason I was hopeful of the government getting involved, because that is something the companies will never do, and that is the single biggest piece of positive information that we could get out of this whole situation.
Yeah, I think. Well, one, China's already already has that in place. I think we should absolutely take a page out of China's book. And secondly, kind of to follow up on this is the impact of all the backlash from Battlefront 2 specifically. DICE is working. DICE, who made Battlefront 2, is working on the next Battlefield game. And they have been talking a lot about, about the fallout from the loot boxes and how they're kind of all now kind of treading very gingerly about how to proceed forward with loot boxes. And I kind of came up with something as I was trying to look up for stuff to talk about today that I think would be a good solution. And here's the thing with loot boxes. Number 1, keep it cosmetic. As long as you don't have it where people can gain competitive edges on one another, I think loot boxes can succeed. And done with in-game currency. No real currency, just in-game. Kind of like Dragon Ball FighterZ in that aspect. If you must charge people money for loot boxes, have it in a system where, say you pay $1 for a loot box. Because you paid that $1, at least one piece, guaranteed, in that box will be brand new. And say there's something that's so, there's a skin that you want so badly, a cosmetic you want so badly, you should be able to pay for that outright. For a premium price, say $3.
There's actually a couple of games that have done that.
And there has, and that those are the examples I'm drawing off of. Is if they did simple things like that, I think people would not mind loot boxes as much. There will be people like myself that will gripe about it, sure, but that's just because I'm old and cranky and get off my lawn. Damn kids.
Old man yells at cloud over here. It's a.
But I think, at least for me, that's, I think that would be I think that would be an improved step in the right direction.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, here's one thing it's not that I don't get. I don't think a lot of the people who are doing this think of, if they think of video games at all. This 21 years or older, if you couldn't get a game that has loot box mechanics in a game, unless you're 21 years or older, I don't know if they've really thought that through on what games that would affect. Because some games that I think they consider family friendly, every sports game that has been released, every single one that is on the shelves right now, the FIFAs, all the NFL games, the Madden games, every single one of them has this mechanic in it. So you're never buying a sports game. You're never getting that. I mean, that's where 7 years ago or whatever, You had the first issue of this where a kid would take their parents' credit card and spend like $7,000 on the equivalent of loot boxes for randomized stuff in the sports games, and that's right off the table right now. I mean, they're going, well, this one or two games we're trying to do this to, but they are not thinking about how many other ones that I would assume, think are fine, that are good, wholesome entertainment, that they're going to be throwing under the bus in this to hit a very small subset. Pass.
Tanya, to you.
That was great. Yeah, actually, I kind of want to take this discussion in a different sort of direction, because, I mean, I look at things, and I just do from a developer's point of view, and I look at what like EA is doing, and of course it's evil because EA equals evil, and and I think it's idiotic and moronic and stupid, and I think that devs who do this are just money grubbing assholes. But saying all that, I looked into it, and something like 45% of the profits of net profits from downloadable games for EA is from microtransactions and loot boxes. Mm-hmm. And that's not a small portion. That's a significant portion of their profit. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I say to myself, well, will I ever implement microtransactions or loot boxes in any of our games? And the answer comes back resounding no. But then I ask myself, well, okay, that's for me. Now, what about other devs? Should they alter their pricing for their games? And now that's kind of where I kind of get a little gray, because it's like, if you're going to base your profit model off of loot boxes and microtransactions for a large majority of your profit, then me personally, in my opinion, I think, and professionally as well, I think that if you're going to do that, if you're going to base your model on that, then I think you need to either lower the base price of the game or even make it free. Because you're basically employing free to play models, but you're basically employing at that rate.
Well, sorry.
No, I was just going to end with, actually, it's just that I don't believe in paying $60 for a $60 AAA game, and then have to spend another $20, $30, $40, $100 on top of it just to be able to get the proper weapons, the items, blah blah blah, and so forth and so on. I think it's ridiculous.
I know Nick and Ron were waiting, but I just wanted to chime in on one thing and go, we actually, for anybody who's listening right now, we discussed this topic in a lot more detail a couple episodes back, so if you guys haven't seen that, you should jump back there and take a listen to that.
I just want to mention quickly that the bills that have been brought before the House in Hawaii, or before the House and Senate in Hawaii, is 4 bills total. 2 of them in each of the, basically both bills. It's basically just both bills in each of them that get discussed over and combined, and then try and work out the kinks between the two before they get actually presented to the governor of Hawaii to get approval or veto or whatever. So basically, the first one is they want to define loot boxes as a randomized in-game reward that can be bought for real money, which is a fairly accurate description of what a loot box is. There can be cosmetics attached to it. There can be in-game actual statistical things attached to these items, but the description is it's a wide-ranging general description, which can again get thrown into wording as written versus wording as intended for later lawmakers down the line. The second bill is they want video game publishers to label their games with notices that they contain loot boxes, which, okay, kind of makes sense. And here's the big one, though. Disclose what the rates are of receiving each reward in their system. That's basically saying, what are the odds of me getting X item? Now, some developers don't mind giving that information, but most of them don't want people to know that number because they want people to feel that the item they got is actually, if they got an item and it's actually a rare one, they want to give that, like, oh wow, I got a really cool rare thing, that's fantastic, compared to, oh, I got a thing that's like, I got yet another thing that's got a 30% chance of me showing up in my loot box.
I know Nick is going to go. I just want one quick point there. If the developers that are balking at the idea of disclosing the rate of item drops with a loot box, isn't that sort of a tacit admission that, yeah, this is gambling?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I don't think they want. I think this is the beginning of developers starting to realize they got their hand caught in the cookie jar, and they're trying to figure out how they can get their hand out of the cookie jar with the cookie in hand before they get it slapped out of their hand.
Thank you, Brian. You just took my talking point away from me.
I'm sorry.
It all depends on what you define gambling as, because traditionally the legal definition hasn't been something that is randomized that you put money into. It's that you have to be able to get a physical payout of money out, and that's how they've avoided this for so many years.
Yeah, because it cannot be. You are not getting a tangible reward like a casino would be. If I went to go put money on a football game, I'm getting money back if I win. That is gambling. For this, it's more virtual rewards. But with the prominence of a lot of tournament play in Twitch nowadays, it can, in fact, be gravitating towards, tangible rewards. And I think that's why it needs to be looked into a little bit more.
I mean, that's no different than Magic the Gathering or any collectible card game. And there's already been a ruling on them that they are not gambling.
Maybe we need to revisit.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying they would have to change the definition of gambling, period, and that's going to have a ripple effect on a shitload of things. And that's perfectly fine if that's what we want to do, and that's what we need to do. But it is absolutely something that needs to not be a knee-jerk reaction, because they need to be aware that, okay, this is going to affect, if they change that legal definition of gambling, it's going to affect anything randomized, and that's going to affect a lot more than people think.
It's also related to the idea with the emergence of digital currencies, bitcoins, cryptocurrencies, those things. Like, those can, in theory, have tangible benefits behind it with real life money. Again, cryptocurrency is a very new thing in our society, not society, but in the internet world, really, and that is a thing that the government is still scrambling to figure out how they want to deal with.
Well, wouldn't cryptocurrency fit into like the currency of foreign currencies, like comparing the yen versus the dollar, or the dollar versus the peso, or the loonie, what have you? I kind of feel it's in that market, really. So I feel.
Yeah, but what happens?
I somewhat fail to see how Bitcoin would fit into this, but I understand where you're coming from, Ron.
The government doesn't recognize Bitcoin as a currency. I think that's the big difference there.
The government may not, but other governments do, or at least have acknowledged that this is a thing that can have actual physical paper money behind it, and that's why.
Well, yeah, you can buy and sell it.
Yeah, and trade in it, and you can use like 0.01 bitcoins to buy a pizza from.
I was agreeing with you, Ron. I was trying to say I was trying to comment to Nick, going that that's the reason it's not the same as other currencies in that we don't regulate it like a currency. We don't treat it like a currency, which means it can be abused in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what the current issue is right now, is that it's probably being abused for both good and ill things, but
Mhm.
that's also a thing that is sort of tangentially related to this, because it's not a physical object. It's all digital. It's all zeros and ones. But there is a physical paper behind it if you believe that there is. And that's what I think some of this loot boxing is going to tie back into. Is I think we're starting to get to the point now where digital objects do have a physical consequence to them, and that they're going to need to start being subjected to physical laws.
Oh. Alrighty. Excellent. So, with that, we've gone almost an hour on this first half, and there's still Ronnie and I left to go. I'm sure the second half will be 3 hours long, but
You guys know me too well.
I do. It's
You left me for the second half with only 2 people on purpose, didn't you?
Occasionally I can be a puppet master. So, dance!
Especially since I have a feeling I'm going to get a very visceral reaction from Tanya on my premise, I think.
Oh boy.
Which is why I'm going to let you go first in the second half, so that the topic I'm going to bring up, it'll be a nice, happy, everyone can be, glad and happy, and a nice way to end the episode on. So,
Oh, please, you don't know Ron and me that well. We'll sour your parade.
By the end of the episode, your topic is going to be, why do I let Ronnie on podcasts again?
Well, that's why I'm going to put you in front of the firing squad first. But that's on the second half. So you will have some music, as is our usual custom. So we are doing the free play. We are going to continue the discussion on the second half. You're listening to the first in 2018 of our open discussions. We'll be back. Welcome back to free play number 1 of Season 8, downloadable content. We are all still here. We have not been turned into a bad mobile port.
That was a good one.
We have not. No, we have not. I'm. RPG Maker can do a better job, and that's really depressing. But
Well, have you seen what they managed to do with RPG Makers recently? It's really quite amazing.
I was
There's
a
some
beta.
amazing games.
I was a beta tester for a company that traded in RPG Maker. You're
And if
talking
there's
to
one
you're talking to the CEO of that.
If there's one thing I know is if you can take any engine, if you really push it, you can make some interesting things.
And oh God, have you? 1 a.m, Tanya, this broke.
Oh, hold on, let me fix it.
All right. So, but moving right along, so we've had some great discussion in the first half, so much so that we only got through 3 of the panels. So you have Ronnie and me to look forward to for this second half. So
Get the liquor.
where's my bottle of Amontillado? I might need it. For God's sake, Montresor. Ronnie, let's start the second half with you.
Okay, so how about them RPGs?
Oh boy.
It depends on what you're talking about there, Ronnie.
Okay, so
Let's go over that first.
I want to discuss the traditional turn-based battle system found in most early RPGs that in many modern games they are starting to phase out. Why that's true, and what could be done to improve the system, or where the flaws in the system were, or if there's no flaws in the system. We'll discuss what everybody feels about that.
Hang on, let me grab that axe again.
Yeah.
So, before we dive into that, I'm just curious, Ronnie, as to what was your inspiration for this particular topic?
My inspiration was when we had the Undertale discussion, and in that discussion, I brought up how RPGs are moving away from it, and I went, we should really talk about that in another topic. And then the free play came up, and I went, oh, hey, we should really talk about that topic.
Hey! Just
following through.
You are very good, and I referred you, and I'll refer anyone. We did a whole episode on this back in season 4, so we're going 2014, where we talked about the differences between Western and Western RPGs and JRPGs. But I have a feeling this is going to be an extension of that. So,
well, it's going to be a more modern look on it, because most of the games at that point, we were talking about trends in the industry that were being seen. At this point, I'm looking back and going, this is what's happened. Because at this point, it's not we're moving away from it. It's the majority of RPGs either use a modified or a completely different system than the traditional system, with the few major outliers primarily either being successful indie titles, or, which even indie titles, most of them have moved away, or they are legacy titles where switching the game, where switching gameplay isn't as necessary. The 2 examples I'll give of that are the Persona series and the Pokemon series, which both have made a name for themselves with the system they already have. So basically, they're just holding on to it because of the legacy.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So shall I just? Oh.
No, Tanya's got to chime in. So.
Actually, honestly, I can't believe I'm actually saying this. I agree with you.
What?
I have to qualify that though. See, okay. Is the games industry moving away from turn-based original? I'm going to qualify that statement. Turn-based original type gameplay. Yes. However, I'm qualifying that by saying what we're doing is we're taking the original turn-based formula and we're either giving it an evolution or a revolution. And that's what we're doing. Like, for instance, I'm actually going to plug my own game here for a second.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, here we go. So if you take our upcoming sci-fi role-playing game called Sanctus Mortem, and that's going to be released this year, yay! If you take that game coming up, it employs ATB, but it's got a different sort of. It has different algorithms. It has a different feel to it. It uses timed hits. It uses what we call the command control system. There's a lot of different systems now that you can use within the turn-based formula to either evolve it or even revolutionize it. And you said it earlier actually with successful indie titles like Darkest Dungeon. Mm-hmm. That uses turn-based formula.
Yeah, I got a couple I'm going to bring up a little later on.
Yeah, but in our earlier titles, we use ATB/turn-based, and it works to an extent. But even then, we don't use the original turn-based formula no more. We really don't. We either use ATB or we'll use a conditional turn-based system. It's always something different than the original Final Fantasy 1-esque type gameplay.
And it feels like the industry is searching for that one model because almost every game is enhancing it or abandoning it. And I'm sorry, I'll let you go in 1 second, Nick. I just want to respond to this. That every company is kind of exploring enhancing it in its own way. Every one of them's kind of trying to do it differently, trying to pull a different thing in everywhere. There hasn't been there probably shouldn't be a one-size-fit-all scenario, but it's not like the old days where it was, oh, we have this change, now everyone's going to use it. Now there's all these little changes trying to improve the formula, and it may not be for you, but I think for some of the industry, I think they're making changes without really being aware of what they're trying to fix. Okay, Nick.
Sorry, I got distracted by roommate. I think at least with turn-based RPGs, you really don't see. I think you really nailed it there, Tanya. That a lot of industries now try to put their own unique twists and spins on the traditional formula because people want their own flavor to it, and especially with a lot of the game industries now, they try to go for such, try to blend this sense of fantasy and reality. It's realistic, but it's still in this fantasy world. And I see that a lot in the Western RPGs, specifically like Fallout and Skyrim, where it's kind of more action-based rather than the traditional turn-based style that I've grown up with and love. It's why I love the old Final Fantasies, because of the way that the turn-based combat worked, or the ATBs worked. And it's why I mostly, why I play a lot of Dragon Quest nowadays, because they're one of the few companies that still use turn-based combat almost to a fault. And I like that sense of tradition, and I think that's why I gravitate towards games like Dragon Quest, or even things like Mega Man, because it's really more of the same, and it's what I'm familiar with, it's what I'm comfortable with. And I think that's what a lot of people try to do nowadays with their RPGs. Most of the people that are coming into the gaming world now are so used to the types of games that they grew up with, like the conditional turn-based of Final Fantasy X, or the ATBs of Final Fantasy VII, or the open world explorations of Elder Scrolls or Fallout. And you're seeing a whole lot of different styles, but you're not really seeing more of this turn-based system because really it's starting to be outdated. Now, I say that regrettably because that's my style. That's my era of gaming and RPGs, is that traditional turn-based style combat. So, and I lost the rest of it. Ronnie, go ahead.
Well, off of what you were saying, I actually have something else I was going to say, but off of what you were saying, I actually kind of consider the cutoff, if we're talking about Final Fantasies, that 9 is the last one that used the traditional method, so I would actually include 7 when I'm talking about traditional.
And see, I don't. I consider traditional to be 6 and earlier, but that's just due to my age and me being
no, but I mean,
fart.
I mean, it uses either an active or wait time battle system. Like, the only real major difference in it is limit breaks, which existed in 6, just in a slightly different manner.
Materia.
Well, no, but that's an out of gameplay system. Like, I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying, like, I'm literally just talking about combat mechanics. And at that point, casting spells is the same regardless of how you learn.
But that casts such a wider net, though, of just because if we're talking strictly combats, I mean that can cast, that can be a pretty wide net.
I'm doing a wide net on purpose. The traditional turn-based battle system, with whether active or wait, was a battle system where you had your bar that you waited to fill up. You do your action, and then you let your opponent do their action, and that's the battle. And that pretty much describes almost every RPG from Final Fantasy IX earlier, with very limited exceptions, and I have 2 that I'll be bringing up in a little bit. But the main point I wanted to get at would be, in my opinion, and I'll let everybody else express theirs on this, but where the issue is with turn-based battles, and the main issue that's constantly brought up in the industry, is that the traditional turn-based battle system lacks engagement for the player. And by this, I literally mean the combat in the game, from when a battle starts to a battle ends. They tend to lack depth. The few deep battles that they have are traditionally boss battles. Most of the rest of the random or trash battles you have, you can usually just button mash through or throw your strongest thing. There's no real thought that goes into it. Battles typically lack complexity in these games. While they definitely can be complexity in pre-battle, what materials you put on, what abilities you put on your characters, what you equip to do all of this, but in the gameplay itself, there's very little complexity. It is all pre-battle planning, if the game even has that kind of complexity. But most of the RPGs that do, that's where the complexity lies, and there's very little interactivity in the battle. Those are usually the three descriptions under engagement of why the games lack engagement, and that's usually where they're trying to improve. They're usually trying to improve one of those 3 things: depth, complexity, or interactivity, or all 3 of them.
And I agree with what you say. It's just, at least for me, I have a hard time thinking on the fly. So pre-battle strategy is something I need to do because I need to have the time to be able to think, and that's why I like the original turn-based combat, because it allows me to think things through beforehand and tell what each and every character is going to do before everything plays out. Let it all play out, and then have the next turn commence. And again, just to clarify, Nick, I'm not your enemy in this. Like, I love these games too. I love this battle system. I'm literally just
talking about what I've seen in the industry and in the games.
And I respect that, but it more for me. It just reminds me. It just really more than anything. It just makes me feel dated and aged.
There'll be examples here of more recent titles that are improving on this in ways I don't think you'll have a problem with. So
right,
just
like Bravely Default, Bravely Second.
That is exactly what I'm going to be bringing up.
Great games, by the way.
Go ahead, Tanya.
Well, actually, I was okay. Where am I going to start? Okay, so no, I know. I mean, actually, no. Honestly, I have to say, the original turn-based formula. It's just like you guys. I grew up on it, and obviously, we homage that in our earlier games. It's and that's what indie devs do. We grew up on something we have a passion for and we love, and then we utilize it in our own games, just to different extents. But what I want to talk about in regards to actual battle systems and where the industry's kind of going, is when I've heard it before. I mean, I've actually had this almost exact same discussion with a couple of customers before. And I basically have to say the same thing. It's not that the battle system is outdated. It's that it's becoming more precious when it is used correctly. And that's really the key here. You're seeing it used in games like Lost Sphere, in I Am Setsuna, to name some recent games. Le Grand Legacy, a brand new indie title, just came out. It's amazing, by the way. Check it out. These use facets of the original turn-based formula, whether ATB or original turn-based even. And I have to say, it's kind of a pick your battle sort of a thing. I can't look at somebody and say, well, the original turn-based formula is becoming outdated from the industry because it's not being used in mass anymore in RPGs. No, it's not that. It's that, and as a developer, I can see this. You have to choose the battle system that goes with your story. It doesn't, like, for instance, if I were to make Chronicles of a Dark Lord Episode 1 and use an action-based battle system like, I don't know, like Shadows of Mordor, that might be pretty cool, but it wouldn't work for me. It wouldn't work with the way the story is outlined, and that's kind of how you have to go with it. You play a game like Lost Sphere, that goes with the battle system. You can tell the story through your battles, and that's really key for RPGs. How do you tell your story through battles? Is it fast-paced and action-y? Or do you have to really plan, or do you have to be tactical during battles and tell your story through dialogue during battle where you have the opportunity to wait for things like that? I think it's becoming more precious than it is becoming barren. So that's my take on that. And I also have to say that, I mean, are they going away? Is that system going away? No. I mean, again, recent examples say otherwise. There's even a whole wing of Square Enix now dedicated, Tokyo RPG Factory, dedicated to making games of this type. So I wouldn't say that it's going away. I would say that they're just taking advantage of how precious it's become. When you make all kinds of games in the same battle style, say you make a dozen Shadow of Mordors using this, or a dozen Batman Arkham Asylums using the same kind of battle system, it's going to get tiring.
That's actually kind of the main point, in that if we take a look back, if you take a look back, like Double Dragon was an action game, and if you look through the generations, Double Dragon's action becoming Shadow of Mordor's action, there's a huge difference there in how the game plays while still having the same the same point of engagement. And RPGs just kind of copy and paste the same system, and it never really evolved until it got to the point that it kind of fell out of favor for a while. And it is coming back in several forms. but I think kind of the issue was they kept using the same formula for so long without really trying to evolve it, that now everybody's trying to evolve it in their own way as fast as possible because they realize the issues that can be in it, but they don't really have solutions. So people are throwing everything they have against the wall to try to find what sticks. And a couple things have absolutely stuck.
You also run the risk, I mean, and we see this now anytime a JRPG comes out. If a JRPG is paying homage to the games before it, I mean, you can read a review of any of these, and they're all going to say, "Oh, it uses the old, active time battle system, and this game feels very tired and very dated," and it's all about that review now because they very heavily influence game sales, and if you get a big publication saying your game is tired and boring because it uses 30-year-old mechanics, then yes, you're going to wind up with the problem, the issue you now have with developers and RPGs basically trying to reinvent the wheel with every single game.
Final Fantasy.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 had a turn, your original turn-based system where it just was based off of your character's speed or dex stat versus the enemies. Very D&D sort of thing. Then you had the block of Final Fantasy games 4 through 9 that used the exact same system. It used the active time battle with a very little deviation. Then 10 had its conditional turn-based system. 11, I have no clue.
It was MMO.
11 was the MMO.
One of the two MMOs.
And 12 sort of reinstituted this mesh of real time with a soupçon of ATB and
the Gambit system.
Yes. And
MMO Light.
And then you had 13.1, as I call it, which sort of drifted back a little bit toward the ATB, but with a few little different touches of their own. I mean, Square...
12 and 13 actually had, whether they were successful or not, they actually strayed pretty far from the default.
It's...
being able to switch your entire team's class in battle and completely change what they're doing, that actually added a lot of depth to the game.
It did.
But that's, yeah, but that's also a thing where that doesn't change. That changes how the fights, that changes the trinity of healer, DPS, tank. That changes how that works, but it's still going to change the mechanism by which combat occurred, which was for walking around, random battle occurs, screen break, different transition to an entirely new battlefield.
Like I said, the evolution goes in, everyone takes it in a different way, and it wasn't all positive. All I'm saying is that they definitely were trying to do something new by letting you switch your classes in the middle of battle, or making it so that how and which classes you switch to and how your party composition is set up was something that's normally what you do pre-battle, and now it's allowing you to do it on the fly and require you to do it on the fly to effectively use your team. That actually was a pretty significant change in how the game actually plays.
It was, but so here's what we now have. I mean, we've been spending a lot of time talking about Square because, I mean, let's face it, we all grew up on Square titles.
And 15 abandoned it entirely.
15 I haven't even played yet, so it's...
it's an action game.
No, Greg. I'll make sure to never buy it.
It does not use a traditional system at all. while it's not the same system, it's closer to Kingdom Hearts than it is to a standard Final Fantasy battle.
And that was by design because, Kingdom Hearts, action RPG.
Yeah.
That entire franchise is Tetsuya Nomura's brainchild, and then when he took over for a while yeah, that's pretty accurate, Tanya.
Yeah.
When Final Fantasy 15, that was where they decided that they wanted to go, and
guys, that's too good not to share with the audience.
okay,
That's more accurate than it ever should be.
Yeah, so
Tanya just shared the true title for it: Devil May Final Heart 15.
Okay, that's it. Tanya wins the episode. I'm locking up. We're going home. That's it. That's it. That's it. All episodes can be found
on this episode of downloadable content.
All episodes can be found on iTunes, YouTube, and that's it. Tanya, you close up. I'm leaving.
Well, hang on. Well, with how much DLC they've added recently to Final Fantasy 15, it's going to be Devil May Final Heart 15 Dream Distance version 3.0 Hyper Extra.
There
Turbo.
we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Turbo Edition. So,
my God.
But steering us back a bit. It's to your point. I mean, this whole point you bring up. It's like I feel that developers, both AAA and indie devs who employ RPG battle mechanics, they're trying so hard to reinvent the wheel every time because they're afraid of the dreaded, dated word that will pop up in a professional review. They're all afraid to get that negative criticism of this game is using mechanics that are 30 years old and we're all sick of.
Well, is it just the professionals, or is that a lot of the fan base as well?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that's also perhaps a generational thing because, all right, you have the 5 of us here on this episode. We're all in our 30s. We don't mind, and we all still enjoy playing games that use these older systems.
I suppose here I'll ask everybody here. How many people here have played Bravely Default?
Yes.
Yes.
How many people here loved Bravely Default?
Yes.
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 Bravely Default is an evolution of the system. That is not the traditional system. The Brave and Default system is a huge difference in how the game is played, giving it a large amount of depth compared to traditional ones. That is what we're talking about, and that still feels like a traditional turn-based game. We don't have, not everything has to throw it out entirely. Changes like that are a large part of what we're talking about.
And would be welcomed. Ron?
I was going to say that the Brave and Default system is still a turn-based system in the sense of there's not an ATB per se, but there is a hidden dexterity stat because you'll do your actions, but then you don't know if your action is going to occur before or after the enemy goes.
Yeah.
So there's still a hidden number there that's augmented by dexterity or speed or agility or whatever the heck they're calling it. I don't remember exactly what.
Well, yeah.
But
it's variability.
Yeah. The innovation of, for lack of a better term, DBZ charge up leading to super attack is an innovation that it is a subtle change, but it drastically alters the game to the point where at certain points in the end game requires you to use the mechanic and basically min-max your character to beat the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if I may, there's a game that comes to mind that really does kind of, and can't believe I'm using this the turn-based battle is kind of on its head a little bit, and that's actually Radiant Historia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, another great game.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, amazing, and get Perfect Chronology, by the way, it's out now. But yeah, I mean, that uses a very different kind of turn-based system, where actually you can even take your opponent's turns. It doesn't go by strictly by, well, your agility / dexterity stat causes you to go here in this turn order. You can actually take turn orders. You can manipulate turn orders. And that's really, and not, honestly, what we're all kind of talking about here kind of boils down to one thing, and that's how we perceive turn-based systems in this day and age. What is a turn-based system in the year 2018? Is it ATB? Is it Radiant Historia's battle system? Is it Lunar Silver Star Story Complete system? What is it? Is it Final Fantasy 3? Is it Final Fantasy 6? I mean, if you ask me, what a game released in 2018, Lost Sphere, is that a turn-based system? Yes, it uses ATB, but I've known customers who've told me personally they don't consider that turn-based. They consider that to be ATB. When they think turn-based, they think Final Fantasy 3. So,
okay,
I mean,
yes, but that's really, like, Final Fantasy 3 had the exact same ATB, you just weren't required to use it.
Right. But in this case, it's more like, what is turn-based in the year 2018? How did, do we even have a definition for it anymore?
For me, my definition of a turn-based RPG is you wander around on the map, you either random encounter or physically touch a monster, and there is a perceivable shift between passive walking, acting, interacting with objects, and combat. Not just a simple change of music, but also new menus popping up, new actions, new options you can do. They're all damage related or healing related or what have you. And then once the combat ends, you go back into exploring, interacting, talking to NPCs, what have you. But there has to be that shift between, okay, I'm out of combat. Okay, now I'm in combat. Okay, combat has ended, and I'm now back out of combat. It is a sort of D&D style thing.
You're thinking Dragon Quest.
Well, yeah, Dragon Quest too, but I mean, think about it. Like, Bravely Default, I would say, is a turn-based RPG.
It is.
Because you wander around the map, a random encounter happens, you get battle transition, screen shattering, you go to a various playfield, and then you fight the enemy, you get the money and XP from it, and then you shift back into the overworld map or dungeon or wherever you're exploring.
See, to me, it's even simpler than that. Like, random battles has nothing to do for me with being a turn-based game, because there are turn-based games without random battles, and there are random battles, well, it's rarer in non-turn-based games.
Yeah, I guess the point I was trying to make is, to me, a turn-based battle is a shift, a dedicated shift between exploration into combat and from combat into exploration.
Well, I'm sorry. I just gotta put this in real quick. There's an exception to that, and because I definitely want to consider this game to be turn-based. Star Ocean.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that does a shift between the field, and you go into a combat, and then you shift back again. But that's not turn-based.
Yeah. I mean, to me, turn-based is whenever you're in a combat scenario, you have a certain order, whether it's revealed to you or not, that your characters take their actions in. They can often be based off of some type of speed stat. You have a menu set of options that you choose from in a very static manner, and you generally, outside of your menus, can't affect the battle in any other meaningful way.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Since I mentioned it before, there were a couple games that I wanted to discuss that either enhance or abandon the original turn-based system. For ones that enhance it, we already brought it up. Bravely Default, allowing you to default or use Brave to store your turns or unleash them at different moments to allow you to hold back your stuff and then be able to use your strategy to use multiple turns to your advantage to let you do certain things, which gave it a lot of depth. Another one, which I'm actually gonna reference too, but Super Mario RPG. Pretty old one. I think most of us probably enjoyed that back in the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
you're saying that enhances turn-based RPGs?
Yep. Yep, that enhances it.
Because of the timing window, I'm assuming.
Because of timed hits, your timed defenses, and that your special moves, all of them required you to do certain inputs that would allow you to change the amount of damage you would do. It added interactivity to the combat.
You could say the same thing about Mario and Luigi as well.
Yep.
They're pretty much the same in that regards.
Paper Mario and the Mario and Luigi series all continued that. Also, another game that more recent that uses the exact same system, South Park: The Stick of Truth.
Yeah.
It's the exact same mechanic. But that while Bravely Default tried to add depth, Super Mario RPG and its times one tried to add interactivity. All of them trying to increase engagement. Do you guys agree with those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other... yes, Tanya. End your game. I haven't seen that yet, so I can't have an opinion.
Actually, I do have a screenshot if you'd like to see. Well, actually, it actually kind of lends into exactly what you're talking about.
You absolutely can.
Okay.
The other two I'll bring up, and then I have one last one. That abandon the system are Undertale, which stole bullet hell shooters for its combat mechanic. It tried to make you have to interact with the game. It also, to be honest, stole text-based puzzles for you friending all of your enemies, rather than any traditional type of menu-based combat. But I think anybody who played Undertale would look at it and go, it's definitely derivative of turn-based combat. They just took it in a different direction. The other one I'm going to bring up, and the one I'm going to name, isn't the best example, but it is. It's the best example for the combat, but technically it's not a true RPG, but there's a whole bunch of RPGs that use the exact same mechanic. And that's Slay the Spire, which is a roguelike, which gives you typical RPG combat, but your options for your turn are randomized from a deck of cards that you create throughout the course of the game. So it's basically like if you took a turn-based RPG and added Magic the Gathering to it.
And then roguelike elements.
Yes. Well, Slay the Spire specifically is a roguelike, but there are several RPGs I found that use the same mechanics. I'm using Slay the Spire as the example because even though it's a roguelike, it's the best example of that style of combat that I've seen. But there's several RPGs that could be named that do the exact same thing. I got one last game to bring up, but do you guys have anything to say on those two before I continue?
Please continue.
Okay. The last one, I know several people here have played Cthulhu Saves the World. I'm going to be
best dollar I spent.
I love that game, and I'm going to be bringing up, and I didn't realize it was one of the newest game from the same developer, Cosmic Star Heroine.
How is that?
It's a great game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen some previews of it. I haven't pulled the trigger yet. Probably will, hearing from you guys. It
can be a little tropey, but I think it's more than a decent game. I think it's a very good game.
Yes.
You're not gonna scare me off on tropey.
Yes. But it does a lot of things, and I want to use it as it's my primary example here because I think the developers went to the drawing board and went, okay, what are the strengths of turn-based battles? What are the issues? And what are all of the things that we can do, that smaller things we can do to make this more engaging? So they do a bunch of things. Tanya, you might have more experience in the game than I have, so correct me if I get any of this wrong, because it's been a while since I played it. But you get your pool of moves are based off of the equipment that you equip, and this gives you several rechargeable abilities that you use, and then until you take a recharge action, you don't get to use them again. So this encourages you to not just keep spamming the same move over and over and over again. It encourages you to equip abilities that interact well with each other, use them smartly, and then once you've gone through your things, then you can take a moment and recharge your set of abilities. Am I right so far?
You're perfectly right.
Okay. The game deliberately chooses to make consumables very rare. It's not that they don't exist, but they are not just thrown at you all of the time, and you are mainly expected to heal off of your rechargeable moves. The longer a battle in the game progresses, you gain style, which is a bonus to damage for both you and your enemies, and that tries to give a rhythm to the battle where if you're fighting an enemy that has a lot of defense but not a lot of attack, you might want to try to drag that battle out because it's going to make it easier for you to deal the damage you need. But if you have an enemy that might be able to one-shot you if it gets strong enough, you might want to try to plow that guy down as fast as possible and just burst damage him, because otherwise he's going to wipe you out. You also have a limit break style mechanic called Hyper Mode, which also fills over time, and when you use it, it lets you double the damage of any of your actions. That, along with style, allows you to try to, once again, kind of manipulate the flow of the battle, the rhythm of the battle, and that rhythm brings the player more actively into the battle and engages them more. Yeah, I think I nailed all the things I wanted to nail about it. But I think, not that I think it's the system everything should use. I deliberately don't. But I really like the fact that you can tell that they thought about what they were doing, and they weren't just throwing everything against the wall. They were going, what are the flaws, and what can we do to mitigate them and enhance the positives in the system? Okay.
Hell yeah.
Does that set, for the people who haven't played it, does that sound entertaining? And did I do a pretty good job of explaining it, Tanya?
Yeah, I think you did an amazing job explaining it. There's no way I could have done more eloquent than you.
I spent 2 hours on my notes for this
Yeah,
segment.
you did. Yeah.
I was about to say that was clearly apparent from the word go.
That was not
just that. My whole thing on this. I truly over prepare.
Again, really haven't noticed.
That
All
game
the
really is
times
awesome,
we've
though.
talked. Perish the thought.
I am almost done with my notes. I promise.
You sure? You've already eaten up almost 45 minutes. Just.
I got 2 paragraphs left, Brian. Can I finish?
And we still have me left to go, so.
I know. I mean, honestly, and I'd like other people's opinion on this, but I wanted to end this with ideas on on what you guys like about the system, or ones that have done it, and where you'd like to see the system go. What you think would be improvements. For me, I think traditional turn-based combat, the way it has always been, can be engaging, but it has to be deliberately engaging. The company has to be thinking about that as they create the game. And what I mean by that is, the most engaging battles in most games are tuned boss battles. Boss battles where they take into effect exactly what you have and require you to use the abilities you have to be able to complete the battle, where it makes you have to think about it. And most RPGs don't have many of those. They have a couple, and every one of us, I think, can name a couple battles from an RPG that stick with us. And those are the battles I'm talking about. I think the traditional turn-based battle system and this is why I actually disagreed with Ron earlier, I think it works best divorced from random battles. I think it works best in a game where pretty much all of the battles, not just boss battles, are scripted, where you have enemies placed where you can choose to engage them or not, but if you do, they very much take into account what you have at the moment, and the character is their AI is deliberately programmed to take advantage of that fact, where you don't really have throwaway battles, because throwaway battles just are not engaging in the way that they would be for an action game, where it's fun to want to run around and beat the crap out of people in a beat 'em up. You don't get that grinding in a Final Fantasy. We do it because we have to play the game, because that's how the game works. But I don't think any of us would call that engaging gameplay. On the other side of it, for more traditional ones, especially if they want random battles, I think stealing elements from other genres is a very good thing, especially since in the 90s or in early 2000s, every other genre stole the conventions of RPGs between their strong narrative focus, a leveling system, an experience system. So many other genres and games stole all these mechanics from RPGs. I think it's kind of fitting if those genres give back to RPGs a little bit at this point, and that's why I think the RPGs that are using a card game focus. I've seen ones that used puzzle games in their combat. We've seen bullet hell shooters with Undertale. I think all that's good. I think that's a really good thing for the gameplay to try to bring more engagement into the combat. And I think that's what this all boils down to, is engagement.
Except when it's Final Fantasy VII Remake, because then that can just go to hell.
Tanya, that game isn't coming out until we're at least 105. I don't think you have to worry.
Tanya, you and I are just...
And it'll only be part 1, so...
When that game comes out.
Here's my initial idea, just like you mentioning more engagement. I don't know how this is possible. You would need to have a very skilled development team and also a very skilled composing team. I want to see music, like the literal soundtrack of the video game, impact combat. I don't know how you would do that, but I feel like that's a way to make people, I don't say not make people care, but make them engaged and make every battle feel like it's worthwhile.
Bravely Default teased at that a little bit with when you activate your ultimate ability, the music changes, and when the music ends, your ability ends, but if you can do somebody else's, it continues the music and all the bonuses keep building up. Yeah. It's a very minor version of it, but that's a good idea that I'd love to see them explore.
Again, it would require both a very skilled development team and a very skilled composing team to do it.
Yeah. I think the key for both of our suggestions is the gameplay mechanics, the combat mechanics in RPG can't be the throwaway for the developer like it can often be, where it's okay, we know what this is, so we don't really have to spend time on this. We can spend that money elsewhere.
Yeah. And the idea I had, just 5 seconds of thought about this, is the overarching story of this game is it's an 80s glam rock band, and they're going around in a post-apocalyptic world, and they use literally the music they're playing to slay undead monsters and vampires and things like that. And
Fantasy
they're trying
Macross?
Huh?
Is it Fantasy Macross?
I mean, kind of. and then the culmination of this is to try and save the world, or what's left of it, and become the greatest musicians in history by literally saving the world.
You want badass bards?
Kind of. Yeah.
I mean, we have Tenacious D for that.
Tanya, you're the developer on board. What do you think?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. I was actually thinking about Phantasy Star 3, Generations of Doom, while you guys were talking.
I love those games.
And the reason why I was thinking of it is when you're talking about synchronizing, music in the battle and having the battle music change and so forth. I was thinking about that's exactly what they did. If you remember, I don't know if you remember, but in that particular game, if you got the drop on an enemy, then or if the enemy got a drop on you, of course you'd have the ambush music play. But then, as momentum were to gain in your favor, the music would change again. And it would
was that Phantasy Star 3?
Phantasy Star 3 Generations.
Okay, there we go.
They actually did do that, and that was in a 16-bit Sega Genesis game, and they managed to do that.
Yeah, I never played it, so that's why I didn't know about it. But like, the idea I had was like, the battle begins and like there's no music at the start of the battle, but then you choose your soundtrack or you choose the theme that you want to play, and then you can change and try and weave the sounds into the gameplay, and then based upon what soundtrack or what instruments being played at the time, you get various statistical benefits from it. And then
I would play the heck out of that.
And if you can somehow weave together an actual, I don't want to say like, almost like writing sheet music kind of, and then you can start making like quote unquote songs where each song is actually a pre-recorded set of like maneuvers, so like you can go into a fight and then go into like buffing allies, attacking the weakest person with a particular attack, and so on and so forth. But you can still have the option of playing literally on the fly and just like bango drumming someone to weaken their defenses, and then having someone come in with a guitar riff to do like a sound blast into their stomach.
The closest I've ever seen to that has been Art Tanalico. That was the closest I've ever seen anything even remotely close to that, and that wasn't even it. So I mean that's interesting. I find that to be quite an interesting concept. I may have to talk to you more about that later on, because that's you capture my interest with that.
I mean, that was just the idea of like from what Nick or again, what I terrible with names, but like what you would ask of like, what is a system that people haven't used? Like we've used like changing up like the visuals and different mechanics. And admittedly, music is a difficult thing because this is a game that would require not only visuals but also listening, which means it's probably gonna have to be a console game of some kind. And it also means that people that are deaf just straight up would not be able to play it, at least not without some sort of visual input to go along with it.
I was gonna say I could see some kind of little box that has lines that represent each of the instruments as they interweave, and that could be a visual aid for people visualizing this.
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept. I mean, Have you ever thought about going into game development?
I'm already in the middle of one, so.
Oh, there we go.
I mean, I just, like, it was just an idea I had, just be like, it's not... People, like, again, like, this is a game, like, people love talking about, like, soundtracks. If you could literally, like, almost literally write your soundtrack for your game, like have in each, and, like, in theory, every game would probably have their own, quote-unquote, unique soundtrack to it, because you're making this up as the playing, to fit your play style.
That would be, I mean, okay, I can tell you just from my own perspective, the amount of work to go into...
Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. You would require tens of thousands of hours from both developers and the composers to do this.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, we're talking... And not only that, but the programming team, the design team, and the composing team would all have to be in sync with each other at the same time. Now,
yes. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm saying that this is just an idea, and that would require, if a game did come out and it came out and it was successful, it probably would be like the only game of that kind that could exist, because it would require such a perfect storm of developers, programmers, and composers to allow it to exist.
You know what that would be? That would be a Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, it would. And I think the head developer would need to be the head composer.
Yeah,
like it would have to be one where the music and the gameplay were married in that way. And honestly, I don't know if it would be as expensive as you may think, but it definitely would require a decent sized team and a lot of time.
I don't know, Ronnie. Do you have Toby Fox on speed dial?
I do not have Toby Fox on speed dial, but I've seen smaller teams do ambitious ideas like that, but it's definitely not going to be something you can just jump into.
No,
I would love to see that, though.
That would take months of planning, if not years, but it'd be worth it to see it done.
Yeah,
and to go along with it, I think the idea, graphics behind it would probably, like, you won't need to be a graphically intensive game because the majority of the gameplay would be based in the soundtrack itself. So, like, it could be a 16-bit game, but if the soundtrack is fucking amazing and the gameplay is that revolutionary, then, like, that's probably how you would save some time, is simplifying the graphics a bit.
That you just described basically what you just described as a game that would require. First of all, it would require its own engine, of course.
Obviously.
It doesn't require an engine from the ground up, but I would love to see that game get made. Now I'm like really interested in it. I would love to see that game get made. I played the hell out of that game.
Well, I mean, you've practically reverse engineered RPG Maker, so I mean, why not?
So me and Ron have both given our opinions on where we'd like to see it. How about the other three of you?
Give me it, I'll play it.
Not this game, I meant in general. Where do you think the RPG mechanics go?
I have a problem with, at least for myself, because I just want to be able to play something that is mechanically sound, which is a wide net. I get that, but also something that doesn't have to make me think on the fly. And again, I'll state this again: not exactly the best at thinking on the fly. I break easily under pressure. I'm fragile. So, at least for me, like, a lot of the reason why I play traditional games is for the traditional mechanics. So, at least for someone like me, it's why I stick to things like Dragon Quest as long as I have, and why I did not discover this series way earlier in my life. I have no idea why. But it is the kind of stuff that, gravitates towards someone like me. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to every single freaking rule. So to narrow it down to such a tiny box is impossible. But just create something that makes sense. And, have, as Tanya said, have it adapt to the story you are trying to say to help immerse the player into the game. Period.
All right, I guess that leaves me to answer Ronnie's question here. I'm so Nick. That means Kingdom Hearts is just out for you. Action RPGs.
It's not that I don't like the Kingdom Hearts games. I think Kingdom Hearts is a really bad example because they have done 500,000 spin-offs, and it's like, just get to 3.
Yeah, nobody knows where the plot is, but yeah, I see where you're going.
But it's not. But I also don't consider it a real RPG because it doesn't have the things I associate JRPGs with, of the turn-based style combat or the ATBs. I consider it more of an action game, closer to a Legend of Zelda rather than to a Final Fantasy. But at the same time, I think, I kind of feel like Kingdom Hearts belongs in its own, separate genre. So kind of more like Mana games, really, when I think of it. Anyways, continue.
Well, yeah, but Mana would be action RPGs. Like, I guess it's divorcing turn-based from the term RPG, because I feel like Kingdom Hearts falls under RPGs, doesn't fall under turn-based RPG.
And for me, I call it RPGs in the bleakest of senses as more of you gain levels and stats upon leveling up. And and it's like, okay, that's RPG. You have met the bare minimum threshold, but everything else screams it's not an RPG.
Well, I mean, if I may, real quick, I'll just put this in there, and this is just pretty quick here. I can tell you right now, since we were talking about age before, and you know, and since we're all in our 30s, obviously, we all grew up on this, but I mean, if I just took a look at my demographics just now for all of our games released on Steam, and our highest percentage with 47.2% is between the ages of 13 and 18.
Not surprised.
And I mean, is that indicative of the whole industry? No, but that does tell you that, I mean, you know, I think a lot of AAA devs and a lot of indie devs too, I think they get into their head that, you know, that, oh, well, kids, they want fast. They want flashy. They want, you know, they don't want to just sit and think. You know, they don't want to sit and strategize. When actually, yeah, they kind of do. I think it kind of gives them a little bit of a reprieve from all that. And I think that's where Square kind of dropped the ball, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, like, I guess the underlying point I was getting at is we all loved the old school RPGs. But if you really drill down and think about how you feel, and you guys may feel very differently, everybody does, but what was it that engaged you with those games? And I'm willing to bet the characters and plot engaged you way more than the gameplay. And that's kind of the underlying thing here, where it's RPGs survived off of having the best plots and characters in games for years. And then when other games started to jump in, that's where RPGs and the turn-based system kind of fell away. And that's kind of why they're trying to improve it so that the gameplay can be just as engaging as the characters and story. So you're not buying the game in spite of the gameplay, you're buying it because of it as well as everything else. Like a game like Chrono Trigger, everything meshed perfectly. The combat system, the characters, the graphics, like every single thing came together to make a masterpiece. Would that have been viewed as such if any of those pieces had fallen out? It would still be an amazing game, but if it had Final Fantasy I's graphics, I'm not sure if we would think back on it. Same thing as if the characters and plot were less engaging, or if the battle system was less engaging, would we view it the same way? And every one of them, I think, in any case, we would still have a great game, but I don't think we would look back on it the way we do right now.
It's a perfect storm. You got to have a perfect storm for your game, and you got to have the right story for your battle system.
Absolutely. You can't do it blindly. I guess that's ultimately what I come down to on this is, regardless of which system you choose, what things you choose, you need to make it needs to be a deliberate choice. It shouldn't just be, this is what we've always done, so we're just going to do it. If you're choosing the traditional turn-based battle system with no changes, you're making that choice deliberately because you feel like that is the best choice for what you're trying to give your players, or you're changing it because you feel like that would be what's best for your players. It all comes down to what you feel is the most beneficial choice for your game. Mic drop.
All right. I should have given you your own episode for this because you have gone almost 65 minutes, Ronnie. It's
Originally, I was going to see if I could guest host this as its own episode, but I decided that, oh, well, you know, I don't know if we have enough for this topic, so, you know, it'll be fine in a pre-play.
all right. So now that we've blown past the length of the first half, it is on to me to close.
Are you really surprised?
No, I'm not.
No, I'm really not.
No. Like, this is the 5th episode of this season, and you have contributed extra hours to the average length of an episode. So no, I'm not surprised at all. You've got things to say, and that's fine. But my topic is not going to be anywhere near as involved or as in-depth as yours. It's actually going to be something completely different. Today we have an anniversary. This specific date. I mean, by the time this episode goes up, it will be within a few weeks, and it'll be no longer as current. But today, March 3rd, 1 year ago today, the Nintendo Switch came out.
God, it's already been a year.
Today is exactly 1 year, and my God, what a year it has been for Nintendo.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Mostly Zelda, but
A lot.
Not just Breath of the Wild. Nintendo has not been sitting on its ass on one game.
It depends which corner of the internet you walk on. But yeah, what a year they've had.
I have more games on the Switch than I do on my PS3, PS4, or Xbox 360.
Wow.
Damn!
I might argue I have more games for my Switch than I do all those combined, but I would have to go and verify that.
So, because it has been now it has officially been a year, and we're not going to do a whole big long retrospective because we devoted 3 episodes to the damn system last year. We did a pre-release, then one right after release, and one at the end of last year. But now that it is officially a year old, do we all have Switches? Or
access to them? Yes, I think.
I have one.
I have mine.
I have one.
Okay, I'm like, did you plunk down for one? I couldn't remember, but
Finally.
yes. Yeah, you weren't like me. I'd never pre-ordered a console ever in my life until this. So, I've had this since day one. And, I haven't done as much gaming on it as I want to because just life has been rather hectic. But, this 1 year in, Nintendo has sold more Switches than Wii U's. That happened right after the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
In which
also, one of their games, Splatoon 2, is the first game to have sold 2 million copies in Japan in the last decade.
Wow! That's impressive.
Yep.
Can you repeat that?
Splatoon 2 is the first game in Japan to sell 2 million copies in the last decade. It has been a decade since a game has sold 2 million copies in Japan.
Really? That's interesting, because hasn't Monster Hunter World sold like 5 or 6 million copies?
I would have to look it up, but I read this on a couple different sources like a week ago. It was a big deal.
Okay, that's interesting.
And, there have been... I've had, from the games that I have played, I'm starting to develop this problem that I have with the PS3, and that's games still in their shrink wrap forever and a day. I just picked up Bayonetta 2 for the Switch because
You didn't get the 1 and 2 collection?
Well, Bayonetta 2 for the Switch comes with Bayonetta 1.
Is a digital download. If you have a physical copy of Bayonetta 2, it'll give you a free digital download code for Bayonetta 1.
Gotcha. Okay, never mind.
Because I've never played Bayonetta. I've played Devil May Cry, loved it, and I suspect that I'm going to really enjoy this game. There are, obviously I'm still playing occasionally Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I got Mario Odyssey for Christmas. That is pending.
It's still in the shrink wrap.
It is still in the shrink wrap. And not for much longer, though. One of the first things I did, priority unpacking. I got the board games and the video games out. Priorities.
To answer Ron's question real quick, the Splatoon 2 one is console sales.
Okay.
Monster Hunter World hit that with online with Windows sales as well.
Okay. Well, Wait, it's not on PC yet, though.
I was gonna say I'm just looking at the thing right now, and it's specifically console sales. So I'm looking at Monster Hunter World and trying to figure it out right now. But
I'm just like what? Like I was gonna say, like I could see Monster Hunter World selling 5 or 6 million copies
no, but
worldwide.
Monster Hunter World did sell 6 million copies.
Okay,
but I'm looking at it going, okay, was it released somewhere else other than Japan? Because that could be it. I know it's not here yet.
Monster Hunter World's in the U.S. It's on consoles at the moment.
Okay, then I thought it hadn't released yet. Okay, then that's probably it because this is exclusively Japan.
Yeah. So Monster Hunter World it was released like 3 weeks ago at this point.
Okay, that's why I'm just behind the times on that.
Okay, I was gonna say because but the thing was, the issue was that it's not going to be on PC until the fall.
No, I'm looking at it now. I'm realizing that.
And steering this back, looking ahead to year 2 of the Switch, we got the announcement at the end of January that Nintendo, the online service of Nintendo Switch, which is currently free, will be subscription-based starting in September, which, everyone expected because you already have paid subscription services with PlayStation Plus. PlayStation Plus. That sounds like a disease. That's hey, I'm sorry, you got the plus.
That sounds like one of those puzzle games that you back of the Game Boy.
No. PlayStation Plus is their new branding for their movie subcatalog. Instead of being a Cineplex, it's the PlayStation Plus.
It's a PlayStation Plus. All right. And Nintendo's announced that the service is going to be $20 per year starting in September, which I believe is the lowest of the 3.
By far.
Yeah, by far, yeah. $20 a year is like
a third of what Microsoft and Sony charges.
It's like I thought Microsoft and Sony both charge $65 for a year.
I have no idea. I'm not subscribed to either one.
That sounds right.
So, I think that even though it's currently free now, and there's going to be additional features that go along with this subscription, I think that's going to be pretty reasonable. I mean, you either pay $4 a month, $8 for 3 months, or $20 for the year.
I think their concept here is they want to make this such a good value that every single Switch owner will have it. Like, they want to hit almost complete market saturation for this, and that's why they're offering such a good deal and why I expect a lot of benefits to doing so. Because they don't want 30% or 40% of people to use it, especially since their games, for the most part, there are exceptions, don't have a strong online component to force them to do it like PlayStation and Xbox have. They need a different way of doing it, and by the lower price and the bundled benefits, I think they're just making it so you'd be dumb not to.
Yeah, if they're looking for 80 or 90% market saturation on the Switch for the subscription service, like the low price point is going to be the big thing. But they also need to make sure they have at least something worth spending $20 a year on. Like it doesn't have to be a major thing, but like I don't know, all DLC for the first 2 or 3 months of a Nintendo game is included in the subscription, so that like or a subscription pass is like a reduced price or something like that. So that way, when Metroid comes out on the Switch, like you can get the subscription service, and then like maybe you get a couple free like skin unlocks or ways to play the game or something. I don't know.
I'm going to be pretty curious. I'm probably going to be plugging down to $20 for the year when this comes up. I mean, I love playing Mario Kart Online. I mean, that's a blast for me. I mean, yes, I suck at it, but that's all right. That's quite all right. And I'm I lost my train of... Oh, there it is. Apparently, a lot of people have been clamoring for Nintendo to, you know... We're watching Nintendo take its baby steps toward what this internet thing is, and a lot of people are wanting Nintendo to jump on the cloud saves functionality.
No.
Yeah,
No.
I don't really see that happening.
I know. Fuck. Like, okay, if it's cloud saving in addition to local saving, okay, fine, whatever. But if it's cloud saving only, yeah, no, fuck that.
But I mean, I saw this, and you know, I was kind of had the reaction that Nick did, and I'm just like, why? Like, why would Nintendo do something like that? I don't see what the benefit of having cloud save functions for Nintendo. I mean, it's not like you can play Nintendo games on your PC.
Yeah. You wouldn't be able to really move it anywhere. What would you do? Move it from Switch to Switch when people have their own profiles and whatnot? I guess in that regard, maybe, like being able to move profiles over from Switch to Switch, but we already have that. I think Nintendo added a feature that'll let you duplicate.
Yeah, let you duplicate files and put it on an SD card, I thought.
Yeah, so, again, why the cloud saving? It kinda doesn't make sense.
Well, unless they're preparing for a jump. I mean, I know that obviously the Switch is doing extremely well, but I mean, what if they are, they're on mobile devices now. What if they're going to start with a jump to PC?
If they're going to make it so that you can play Nintendo games on a mobile device or on a PC, and then you can and then you want to do cloud transferring between them, holy fuck! That's literally going from like 2003 Nintendo to 2018. No, sorry, 2020, because some fucking games still don't do cross-platform. It's bullshit.
Look right at you, Sony.
Yeah, that would literally be going from like basic arithmetic, like addition and subtraction, to quantum physics in about 6 weeks.
I thought everyone was just speaking over me. I didn't realize I was muted for like the last 5 minutes.
Oh,
I'm kind of tempted to say instant karma, but I will.
What I was going to say was, I mean, part of this, first of all, you have the 3DS, which they still say is an active system, and they could be trying to do that, because honestly, this whole cloud saving thing sounds like, for their original premise for Smash 4, this was what they were missing to be able to allow the two systems to fully connect to each other, and allow you to bring your profiles and stuff from one to the other without issues. I mean, two, if their whole online component is going to allow you to sign in on other people's games, so that, let's say, Ron, let's say that I'm going to your house and I want to play Smash with you, and each of the players could log in to their one and have all of their settings and however they want to do it right there without having to do anything else. Like, I think that is a lot of what they're trying to do. I mean, right along with, it's 2018, why wouldn't you have cloud saving as an option? There's no reason at all to not have it, to make it so you don't lose progress if your Switch dies, or if you need to switch Switches, or if in the future they decide to have a Switch Plus, like Xbox and PlayStation have, which I think is probably a guarantee. It's just how long before we get it. I mean, Nintendo even does that with all of their handhelds. So, I mean, I think having a method of allowing you to move stuff over or play on your friend's stuff is purely a positive. And we kind of have to look to the future for why they might do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, like, we've had like the outcry of Nintendo not having cloud save functionality just seems sort of, to me, it just felt sort of weird. Like, what? I mean, yes, it's the thing to do now, but
You're waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, Nintendo's doing this because they're going to be bending us over in a different way. How are they doing it this time?
it's like I don't see necessarily the reason yet why the Switch would need that functionality to back up save files. I mean, you can do that to an SD card.
Well, I mean, once again, like they have several games where having your favorite loadout on Smash or on Mario Kart or even on ARMS could become important to let you play with other people, especially like now but since they marketed this as a party console where you can have multiple where you want to play with other people.
But
isn't that why they made the Switch portable and affordable and all that? So you could just take your Switch with you and play it on that instead of transferring Switch from profiles to different Switches and all that.
Yeah,
I think that's why Nintendo's trying to push this, and why there's not a whole lot of split screen support and whatnot is just so, well, you can just get your own.
I agree,
it's cheap enough.
I think they're I'm not, marketing is the wrong term, but their knowledge of the player base and questionnaires probably gives them an insight into why they might be doing this. Either since it's portable, people are breaking them more than they do their typical consoles, so cloud saving may be a very important part for people who need to replace them, or they're finding more people are going and using Switches at their friends' houses when they're over, and that they find that some functionality may help in that respect.
I could see that.
I mean, valid points, sure, but it's just I don't trust Nintendo enough to think that far ahead and to implement things like that, especially on a $20 subscription cost. I mean, we're applying to Nintendo for basic online functionalities.
I think they looked at. Here's the thing: when we talk about deliberate choices versus throwing stuff at the wall and waiting for it to stick, I feel like this is them throwing shit at the wall and waiting for it to stick. I don't think they made all of these decisions for this online subscription by deliberately going, what is best? I feel like this is Nintendo going, okay, we need to have an online subscription service. What could we put in it? And then they wrote all the stuff on a board and went, which ones of these could we implement without spending $1 billion? And went, okay, we're implementing all of these ones. Like, I think it's no more complicated than that.
Well, we'll find out in September when this thing allegedly goes live.
Well, they'll probably release the details at E3, probably.
We hope, or it'll be in some sort of Nintendo Direct, and it might be accompanied by a please understand, but we'll see. We shall see. But yes, the Switch has turned one. What about games? Games coming out in year 2.
Well, I don't know about games coming out in year 2, but games coming out from year 1, I think they had a pretty stacked lineup for their first year.
Absolutely, they did.
Yeah.
I mean, they launched a new IP, ARMS, which I don't know how it's gone, but I own it.
Have you played it?
Yes, I have. No, I have played it, but I don't know how the community at large has embraced it. Because I'm not a fighting game person. I'm not engaged in that community, so I don't know if it's been embraced or discouraged, but I mean, they did release a new IP. They released Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, 2 games that are probably game of the decades, or competing for such. There may be other things in there, but I mean, I think one of them will definitely be up for that award at the time. And I mean, I know some people have said they're some of the best games of all time. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that for Odyssey. I personally, while I love Odyssey, was not as enamored because I feel like open world works way better in Zelda than it does in Mario. That's just me. But I mean, even third party support, they got a lot of stuff going this year and more coming. So I mean, they kind of hit the ground running, and I really like the idea of them porting over Wii U titles since no one played them and they were good.
Why are you whispering?
Because
secret. Okay, I think we've gone too long. I'm losing it. You have Ronnie over here whispering sweet nothings over here, and
Nothing.
I think it's time to wrap this episode. I'm 4 hours away. I can't buy you dinner yet.
Oh, fine.
I think Nick had a list of some games.
Yes, I'll just break down just the notables, the big ones. We obviously have Kirby Star Allies coming out in just a couple of weeks, and I'm getting that day one.
I know you are.
We have Nintendo Labo, which is that cardboard game, which made me
so
go,
cute.
"What the literal?
That
what
is
the literal
so
fuck?
cute.
What the literal fuck am I watching?" We have Dark Souls Remastered, Mario Tennis Aces, Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. We got another Monster Boy game coming out, Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom. I believe that is a remake of the old Sega classic. Let's see, what else do we have? We have, obviously Shovel Knight again, Yoshi, which should be coming out this year. Rumored is Fire Emblem Switch, but they haven't said anything on that. Yes, Octopath Traveler. I was getting to that one, the Tanya.
There's also apparently the Kickstarter game is that there's a Kickstarter game that was made by the guy who did Castlevania. That's on the Switch now. It's in Switch instead of Wii U. That is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. I actually have that. I'm backing that actually, but I'm getting it for the Steam version. No More Heroes 3 is supposedly this year. Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2. Dragon Quest 11. There's also a remix of The World Ends With You. That's coming out this year, I believe, on the Switch.
They say Metroid Prime 4, but I don't think that's coming out this year.
That's probably 2019 or very late 2018.
Yeah, I think 2019 at the earliest, probably 2020. Ditto for the new Pokemon. That is supposedly a 2018 title, but I don't buy that at all. I think that's going to be 2019, 2020.
Yeah, I'm expecting them to announce Pokemon at E3, but that's not going to be until early 2019.
Yeah. So yeah, a bunch of good titles. Not a whole lot of exclusives, at least from what I'm seeing. Take that back. Shin Megami Tensei, Bayonetta 3. Okay, let me roll that back a little bit here. But I think Nintendo, with and we talked about this before, the steady drip of titles, I think is what's really good for Nintendo moving forward. And they seem to have some good, strong lineups for the first 2 years without even having to haul out Smash Bros. So it's gonna be really good for Nintendo.
Yes, good. And Ronnie just dropped because his power just got knocked out, so we're going to have to close this without him.
That sucks.
Yeah. But
considering he hijacked basically an episode for himself, I think that's fine.
Like I said, instant karma. See, it's like that's it. You're cut off. So I poke fun at him because I love him. he and I have known each other for a decade now, over a decade, and just he's so much fun. So. But yes, so I think that is going to do it for us. So if you have any questions, comments, thoughts on this episode, or any other episode of downloadable content, you can let us know using the feedback button, dlcpodcast.com. Every single episode is also found there, as well as iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play Music. Check out the... Oh, now... Oh, wait a minute!
My glorious return!
Wait a minute, he's not...
Just about ready to close this out.
God damn it!
When you think we're free of him, he comes back in and pulls you back down.
Just when I'm doing the final plugs, here he comes...
From underneath the ring, Ronnie comes out with a steel chair!
And he's gonna bash me over the face with it, because he...
I'm excited for Bayonetta 2. There we go. I'm done.
But wait a minute!
Get to play it today.
Bayonetta 2's out! It's out! I said that when I started talking about the Switch, that I bought it, and it comes with a digital download for Bayonetta 1.
Cool.
So...
When did it come out?
Like a week ago?
That would be why. I haven't been to a store in like 2 weeks. I thought it was coming out later on in the month.
Nope, it's out.
Cool.
Yeah, I pre-ordered it. Go get it. Go get it. So anyway,
I gotta go finish the Sonic game first. I gotta finish my Switch games before I move on to my next Switch game. Otherwise, I'll just pile a bunch of them up. Which wouldn't be that bad. They're very small.
He's got the endless backlog. So let me do these final plugs again.
Thank you for being with us on downloadable content. I'd like to thank Nick, Ron,
You go to hell!
and all of our guests for being with us.
Across the internet.
You can find us on Facebook. Sorry, Brian.
I'm just imagining Brian's hands reaching out through the computer monitor like the girl from The Ring.
Right now I have the mouse hovered over the hang-up button for Ronnie. And I'm debating, should I? No.
Here's some blooper reel material.
I kid, but I love you, Ronnie. You're just 13 years of this bullshit, and
I can make you smile. That's the important thing.
That is the very important thing. Still, go to hell. Anyway, if you have any... I love you too. Where is I? DLCpodcast.com. Every single episode is there. Thoughts, prayers, questions, comments, whatever. Send them on.
Please send liquor this way, please.
Please. Nick is... or not. I don't think you need any liquor, actually. So
I'm pretty sure Brian can set up a P.O. box if you want to send us anything physically. be it liquor or fine wines or cottage cheese or something like that.
Or
What?
or Quaaludes, those work too. But disclaimer: downloadable content does not condone any sort of illicit drug use or alcohol. Bullshit. All right, everyone.
Oh my god.
All it remains for me to do is to thank Tanya, Ron, Ronnie, and Nick for being on this episode. You freaks! I love you all. I'm Brian. Have a good one, everybody. Good night!